Hey everybody, it's Travis from the Berm Show. There's a brand new app called Lower 22 Vets for veterans and active duty military members. This app combats suicide amongst veterans by bringing veterans together. So please go check it out. Sign up is free and it's easy, and there's monthly giveaways. You can find the app on Google Play and Apple Store. So sign up now. Thank you. For me too, when I first started doing this podcast, I think seeing myself, like, it's kind of weird, and listening to myself later. Damn, it's like,
Yeah,
I really sound on
yeah,
like, oh damn, it sound horrible.
yeah. You sound great to me, so you're fine.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate the
Thanks.
invite. Let me get a little more patriotic view there.
I know I got a bunch of kid stuff in the bag, a little Captain America, never hurt.
Yeah, yeah.
But
No, I appreciate the invite, man. And social media has been an interesting journey for me because I've just met some really great connections out of it just through LinkedIn and Instagram. I don't really use other social media just because that's all I have time to manage, but
mhm.
it's been really cool. Done some cool stuff with the connections I've had.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride even for me. I mean, this is my, I think, 10th recording or so, somewhere around there.
Okay.
But yeah, I've met quite a few veterans along the way, and it's kind of cool. People have like yourself that I've never actually met in person, but just came across on social media. Getting to hear their stories and stuff like that is kind of interesting because I feel like a lot of people like focus on certain aspects of just being a veteran, but there's so much to it. There's reasons why people join. There's Everybody has a different reason for the most part,
Right.
different experiences. Um, Whether while active and post being active while being a veteran, everybody has different obstacles. Some I've talked to have none. They get out and they transition like seamlessly into civilian life, which is not the case obviously for a lot of veterans. So
Right.
it's always kind of interesting to hear those different stories and get those perspectives. It's actually kind of helped me along the way in a sense, like, okay, maybe I'm not the only one that went through certain things, or man, that's a good advice. Like, shoot, I can implement that into what I'm doing, and hopefully
For
it
sure.
helps me out. So,
Yeah, I
um,
really find that just having the tribe and hearing from others who've been through it kind of normalizes the experience because you hear some really successful, you hear some really struggled, and key is just to stick with it. And we'll get into the questions in a bit, so I don't want to get on a soapbox just yet. But
mhm.
at the end of the day, it's about sticking with something, moving forward, finding your interests. Really, the way I've got to where I am in life is I've always just been like I've gone to different things and said, "Oh, that looks neat. I'll try that. I'll try that. I'll do that." And I don't limit myself to one area or one journey. I just
Mhm.
kind of ride it, and it's made it a lot more interesting for me.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing for most veterans, even just people in general. To be honest, is you get kind of caught in a rut of doing things. Like I think they say now, after the lockdowns, everything, even just amongst everybody, like suicide rates, all this depression, everything's so much higher. And
Yeah,
I think because you can't get stuck in a rut. I mean,
yeah,
like you're saying, if you're not applying yourself to something new or something interesting and giving it your all, that's how you get lost. I feel like I think a
yeah,
lot of people have been there. I know I've been there myself a couple of times throughout the years.
yeah,
It was until like recently when I've gotten older, it's like, man, I got to stop just waiting for things to happen and grab the bull by the horns and start making things happen. It's hard to get to that point, I think, or for a lot of people it is. I know it was for me, but the older I've gotten, I think I'm starting to realize that there's nothing to just clocking in and clocking out every day. You can get really lost
right.
in that, and it gets kind of lonely and dark and depressing. Um, Especially if you're a veteran too. I think that transition's even what makes it that part of it even harder if you
Yeah,
not careful in that.
yeah. To that note, the military really provides that structure to where you can say, "Oh, if I do X, Y, and Z, I can achieve one, two, and three," and
Mhm,
you can set parameters for basic successes. And if you want to go you want to go an extra step. So you start enlisted. So you start out as enlisted, but you want to become a warrant officer or become an
mhm,
officer. There's those other channels that you can take, and there's this, for lack of a better term, there's a manual on how to do it. There literally is a manual. You need this, this, and this. And when you come out here, I'll tell you the one thing that there's one word that stuck with me, and it still sticks with me. When I came out, the world seemed like it was chaos. It was chaotic. There was no first sergeant that was going to come and tell somebody to get out of the wrong gas lane, or, you know, get in the right, stand in line and wait for the groceries at the, like how you wait and you wait for the next cashier to open up. And, traffic was so odd and civilians were so unorganized. And the thing was, I was a civilian at one point. All of
Yeah.
a sudden, I loved and needed that structure. And it took me, I was in for almost 6 years. And it took me almost 5 years to adjust to that and be like, oh, wow, okay, it's not going to be that way. And fortunately, I was in college. I had a good support system. But again, I don't want to jump the gun here. I know you had a kind of a series of questions you wanted to head down.
No, it's fine. I mean, yeah, if we can always, you know, spin off here, that's no problem. Those are kind of just some baseline type deals. But yeah, one of the things I always like to ask everybody is, a little bit about yourself, your background. Like, why did you join the military? What were the reasons why you did it? Why did you get out?
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, I'm
Stuff
gonna move my
like that.
camera.
Some of the basics, you know.
Yeah, sorry. The camera seems really really low to me, so I'm just gonna lift it up a little bit so I don't feel like I'm looking down at the camera.
No problem.
Um, yeah, you know what? The first part of that question, why did I join? I was a product of I was a kid of the '70s and the '80s, and I grew up. Um, I knew my grandfathers had always served in the military. I had an uncle that served in Vietnam. My dad didn't serve, but he took on the responsibility of my mom's four younger siblings at a very young age, and
Oh, wow.
went to college and ended up starting his own business. Very much lived the American dream, Chicano from East LA started a business in the valley, the San Fernando Valley. And he actually ended up being in business for 37 years up until the point that he passed away.
Wow.
But getting back to the reason for joining, I had originally looked at the Navy when I was 17 because my brother he went to West Point, and I was 14 when he left. So the truth be told, I was kind of pissed at my brother for leaving, and I was 14. So what was I going to do? I'm going to join the Navy. I'm going to do the opposite of my brother, right? So when I was 17, my mother wouldn't sign for me. My mom actually scared the recruiter out of my house. She told him, "Don't ever come back." She basically says, "Don't come in here telling us these lies. What are you going to do if he died? That kind of thing. You just don't ever
Mhm.
come back." They wouldn't sign for me when I was 17. So I waited. I had a girlfriend. I tried college. To be honest with you, college wasn't for me, man. I was 17 years old when I graduated. I started college probably I turned 18 2 or 3 weeks after I started college at the local junior college. I had a girlfriend at the time. Just wanted to try to explore that route with the military still being in the background. And I remember sitting there one night. Just I was 19 at the time. I ended up turning and getting to about age 19, 18, 19. I was working part time at a local drugstore, and I just wasn't feeling accomplished. I felt an internal something there was something more I needed to do, I should be doing, but I didn't know how to get there.
Mhm.
And I literally was sitting there watching TV, probably midnight, and the Army Be All You Can Be commercial came on. And I went outside, I had a cigarette, and I said, fuck it, I'm going to join the Army. And it was a service driven decision from the standpoint that my parents had always raised me to be a productive member of society. And I had already basically dropped out of college. Uh, Really, I probably flunked out of college. I dropped half the classes I took. I didn't take it seriously.
Mhm.
And that journey into the military was the best thing I could have done for myself at the time. Gulf War One had happened in 1991 when I was a senior in high school. And so I went into the military knowing we were still somewhat engaged in a world conflict. I enlisted in late '92, and then I ended up going to basic training in 1993. So
Dang.
I worked on helicopters in the Army. I was an airframe mechanic. Um, I made sergeant in about 3 years. So I mean, from a 19-year-old poo butt, like didn't know what he's going to do with his life, to a 22-year-old sergeant in charge of an airframe shop within 3 years. There's no place in this world that you could have that kind of opportunity,
Yeah.
in the civilian world. So it really helped me. It really reframed my life. Um, I really learned that I was the one limiting myself to accomplish things, and I think that is where my success in life later came, was because I just drew on that it was really cliche to look at the commercial and think, be all you can be, but the experience and the challenge and the individual success that I achieved in the military, whatever that looks like to you or to me, it helped lay the foundation for my life, which I'm very proud of that.
And
So
I think it happens. There's a number of folks I can't even think of when I was in that were, they tried the college first,
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like you're saying, that maybe it's not the right time or even the right thing for them.
right,
And uh, that's one of those things I think you see a lot more in society in general today is, I mean, kids, everybody thinks you need to go to college, and I'm not
right,
saying you don't need to, but I think a lot of people think that's like the end all be all of your life at 18, 19 years old. They're like, oh my God, I can't get into any schools. What am I going to do with my life?
right,
It's over. But
yeah,
the military, I mean, like you said, the foundation that it gives you, the structure,
yeah,
you can't really duplicate it anywhere else. I mean,
right,
you can carry it with you and you can
right,
duplicate it amongst your peers or if you have your own business in a sense. But to find it in like a regular company or amongst coworkers is super rare.
yeah,
Um, and I think that's where, a lot of veterans maybe do struggle too, is that part of the transition. Like you're even saying, it took you about 5 years to kind of get your feet, moving.
yeah,
Um, is that because you get out and it's like, man, nobody's moving the same way I'm moving. Nobody's
right,
acting the same way I'm moving. Everybody's just like I was saying earlier, in this trance of clocking in, clocking out, going home,
yeah,
working 8 to 5 or whatever it is every single day, all day, every day. And then you get Saturday and
yeah,
Sunday and you just lay around and maybe do nothing. It's like,
yeah,
man, that's so depressing to think about when you say, like, even say it out loud. It's like that. And I think that's extremely hard thing to wrap like
yeah,
your head around when you come out of the military because it is fast paced. The bonds you make are different because I've mentioned this before, everybody's in the same shit together. So, like, the person next to you, even if you don't really like them, you can respect them because it's like,
yeah,
man, you know what? We're on deployment together and this blows, but,
yeah,
you know, we'll get through it together. We all miss our families, our friends, whatever it may be. And
yeah,
and yeah, that's just a foundational part of the military that I guess maybe you don't even realize it's coming. You're carrying it with you till you do get out, and then it really hits you, like sinks in. Like, damn, that's the only place where you'll probably find that.
yeah. It absolutely is. There, that and sports.
Yeah,
Like I went into law enforcement afterwards, but we'll talk about that a little more after. But that it could suck, but you're still sitting around smoking, sitting around joking, you're playing spades. You're doing something. You're laughing about somebody that dropped something in the outhouse, or you know whatever. There was always something going on, and that camaraderie is very hard to duplicate. And I would agree with you that that's a huge part of transition struggle, is that lack of tribe.
hmm,
And we'll get into it a little bit, I'm sure, as well. My brother was a retired lieutenant colonel. He went to West Point. He had, for all you look at, I mean, the whole chest full of ribbons, the family, the stuff on the wall, master's degree. Within 5 years of retiring, he took his own life. And it's really, this was 4 years ago. So
mm,
I've done 4 years of my own healing from that, because it was probably the worst tragedy or trauma I've ever experienced. I've
Mhm.
lost since I've been out of the Army in 1999. I've lost my grandmother, a favorite uncle, a favorite aunt, um, my dad, my brother, and others along the way that are I probably not even thinking about it right now because but those are the top five just in 19. It was 19 years I lost all those people that were very close to me, and then working in law enforcement, the traumas that you experience that you don't even realize affect you affected me, and it became very difficult. And I know so I was in the mid 90s, and my overseas time was in Korea. So in my era, uh, I had gone to the 101st Airborne Division where my unit had just come back from Somalia. So my era was Somalia, Haiti, Iraq, and Bosnia. And I went through 6 years without deploying to any one of those hot zones.
Wow.
And I worked, and I knew people from AIT that went to all three, if not four. They went to probably not Iraq, but they went to Somalia, Bosnia, and Haiti. And you leave service going, man, I didn't get my combat patch. You know what? That kind of sucks. And you process it and you realize, and I lived with that guilt for a while because I knew once 9/11 hit, I was only out for 2.5 years, maybe 3 years, in a 98, 99, so 2 or 3 years. So I immediately wanted to like go reenlist. I know
Mhm.
people that are going to war. What am I going to do? Why am I sitting back here? And at the time, I was working on a bachelor's degree in art, graphic design, because I worked in the printing business. I intended to then later get an MBA or something, but I worked in the family business, and um, my wife wasn't having it, to be honest. And then I explored the law enforcement area, and my wife wasn't having it. So she eventually supported me. So by the end of 1992, mid to I started applying for my first police agencies. And
No.
I tell people all the time, this is the best job I never knew I wanted. This job found me, and I did pretty good at it. I've enjoyed it. Um, I've worked for three different agencies. I've worked patrol. I've worked as a gang detective, a robbery homicide detective. I've done all kinds of fraud investigations, things like that. So I've done a broad
Wow.
range of things. So my point to all of this rambling is that when my brother took his own life, it devastated me. I'm like, how the hell could I miss this? How could I have not seen these signs? What went wrong here? And I did a deep dive, man. I did a real deep dive, which is the genesis of my nonprofit, our
Mhm.
nonprofit, the Veteran Mentor Project. So in a nutshell, that's kind of a long thumbnail of
Mhm.
how I ended up where I am today. But again, I don't want to steer the conversation
No, no,
away.
no, no, no problem at all. But one of the things that I forget this about this too, but like you mentioned, law
I'm listening.
enforcement and first responders. I think they kind of, in general, get a bad rap or go under the radar of not um, of mental issues. Post their time in whatever it may be. If you're a
Yeah.
firefighter, I'm sure you see some
Oh,
horrific things.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
all those first responders, and nobody ever talks about them, and coming out of their respective jobs or what
Yeah,
things they see. It's kind of, I know we veterans obviously is huge, and as veterans, we're all about supporting other veterans, but yeah, those individuals as well. Nobody ever talks about them. I don't know
right.
if there's somebody out there that is pushing that narrative too, like, hey, these folks, even EMTs, they're seeing car accidents, whatever it may be, or some
Yeah,
horrific injuries and deaths, even. And how do they cope with that when they get out or when they transition to something else? That's one of those things that you never really hear about.
right.
But maybe we should. I think you have something even on your website that mentions something about first responders for veterans and first responders, if I remember right.
Yeah,
So, because and I've mentioned this before with the family and stuff. Even on Veterans Day, I think they should get their respective time as well. It's you can be a police officer for however many years, 20, 30 years, and you've seen a lot of things that a lot of people aren't going to fully understand or even comprehend if you were to tell them.
Yeah.
So getting back,
Yeah.
I want to tie that in kind of even to what you're saying about your brother, which I'm sorry for your losses. I mean, that's tragic. I have an older brother as well, and who's a like a role model,
Yeah.
obviously, even me as a younger sibling.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things I think of just how I've experienced personal experience in dealing or talking to other friends of mine, it's hard to see the signs because I think a lot of veterans don't like to show emotion in that sense. Like nobody in my family would have ever known, or they never did know that I was going through some really deep stuff and hard times mentally and transitionally into the civilian world because I don't you don't like to openly tell people that. I'm not
Right.
sure if it's a masculinity thing or just being a proud individual and sometimes I think it is also like who cares. I think there's not every veteran maybe thinks that, but I'm sure some do. Like who cares, who's going to
Yeah.
care if I say, I'm dealing with this. And because out in the civilian world, it's everything's moving, everybody's
Right.
in their cars and full traffic. You have 8 lanes all packed with cars. Nobody wants to stop and listen to you
Right.
grope. And that's how I think a lot of veterans and even first responders, they fall to the wayside. And you hear these
Right.
stories where, like your brother, and I've had some chiefs that I was in the military with, or individuals that have taken their lives when they've gone out. And you hear stories like that all the time where they go completely berserk and they, you know, commit a heinous crime and kill themselves at the end of it. And it's just, I don't know. How do we as a society and even fellow veterans help other veterans combat that? And I think that's what's awesome about your nonprofit and some of the other folks I've talked to that are doing nonprofits as well. I think we're getting to the point where a lot of veterans are taking it amongst themselves to start solving these issues that we face because it. I mean, and I don't know your experience with the VA, but a lot of the experiences I've heard from veterans and friends and stuff like that hasn't always been the easiest. It's
Yeah.
been a hurdle after hurdle just to get any type of help. So,
Yeah.
um,
Until recently, that's a great point. I want to back up a minute. And how do we help and identify these things? It's just like this, man. A young
mhm,
man like you talking like an old man like me, saying, "Hey, what worked for you?" And then you can look, or and I can look at you and say, "Wow, I went through that," and you can look at me and say, "Oh, he went through that."
mhm.
And that bond is
Oh, I think I lost you there, James.
are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I think I lost you there for a
Yeah.
minute.
When you look at the bubble that you're in, think about whatever base you were at or installation you're at, and how clean manicured the roadways were and the grass. And outside that gate, you know, what did it look like? You know, so when you take thousands of people and you distribute them all throughout the US, there's no longer this group of people that understand each other with a common mission. You're kind of just one person floating around, a guppy amongst a bunch of other people going, "Oh, guy was in the military. He went to war too. We better not piss him off, or or they're afraid to ask. They don't even know. They can come up to you and say, "Hey, man, you're in the military. What'd you do? What was your MOS?"
Mhm.
Um, you get the little kid said, "Did you go to war? Did you kill anybody?" And you can
Yeah.
laugh. You can laugh it away. Like when I go speak to kids, there's always two questions: Did you ever shoot anybody? And do you really like donuts? So it, it's fun. You can make fun. You can have fun with it. Um, But when you take us apart, like you're so strong and together, and then when you're taken apart and put alone, it is isolating. And we're recognizing that as a big issue. That the connectedness, the tribe, the purpose, all of that, because we learn that you embrace that in the military. You promote off of those values, and you come out here and you kind of just alone fish in a huge sea. Um, I don't want to say normal. It's kind of too general of a word, but it's very common what you're talking about, that I hear it a lot, and that's why I choose to volunteer my time to talk to young men and women who are interested in my career field, whether they're veterans or not. But obviously, the preference is the veteran aspect. And if there's a topic I don't know about, I have other mentors lined up that I can connect them to say, can you talk to this person about IT stuff? I don't know anything about the IT field,
Hmm.
but I have people that do. And it's very helpful. I feel really bad. The thing for me about what I miss with my brother, you said something that I keyed in on. He was my first hero. Like, aside from my dad, my brother, I was like his little tail for my entire life. Even going into
Yeah.
the military, he was in the army. I went in the army. The thing that I feel worst about is he was a lieutenant colonel, so he was used to being the overall caregiver. I'm going to take care of the people in my unit, and he had really nobody to go to. So who's there for even those higher ups when the leader needs help? Who does he go to? And even at that time, despite my experience, I heard in reverse time, I can hear the things he was saying, and these were the clues. It's unfortunate that it took the reverse time.
Hmm.
With that knowledge, I'm hoping that you and I can have discussions like these and save some lives. And I think at the end of the day, that gives us purpose, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, the purpose aspect of a lot of it too, I think that's um, what a lot of veterans struggle with is the purpose. And one of the things I also want to mention that or piggyback on that you had mentioned is um, somebody had brought this up the other day. I was talking to him. Yeah, when you're in the military, you do have that continuity. Everybody's together, that brotherhood, or that you're all a band of, you're all together. You're all going through it together. But yeah, when you're out, you do all scatter to the winds. Like everybody, and it's so true. I think of all my best friends that I was in the military with, we're all in different parts of the country. Where man, when we were in, we were like inseparable. We were doing everything together. We were, I mean, driving around together after work. We were partying together. We were smoking together. We're
Yeah,
on the flight deck running around together.
right.
Sleep in our berthing 3 racks high, so we're sleeping basically in a weird way together. Um,
Yeah,
so you leave that and you can't. It's really hard to find that,
yeah,
sometimes you do run into another veteran at a place that you're working, and you mesh a little bit. Like I've had that happen a few times, and it's like there's almost that continuity where you're like, or that sense of like, okay, we work together. There's two of us, we both get it, and we'll kind of laugh at other people. But there's this one story I always bring up when I think of a veteran who is struggling, and I think people don't know that they're struggling. When I was working a part-time job when I first got out of the military, and this kid, he was probably, I think he had got kicked out of the army, but he was like 19 years old, 20. I forget what he did while he was in, but he like raged a couple times on the vending machines, just completely like like smashing them, hitting them, trying to like tip them over.
yeah,
And I remember him storming out, and everybody's like, "Oh, what the hell's wrong with him?" But I knew he was in the military, and I wish that's one of those things, like you say, in hindsight, I wish I would have gone back and said something, but I had just got out too. I think I was still messing with myself, like mentally, internally, I wasn't really there to help as much as I wish I would have. But
right.
it's like who knows what he's going through, what
Yeah,
demons he's battling, and nobody's there to help him.
yeah.
And just like you said, with your brother being a high ranking official, I always think we had a senior chief, or he was a chief when I got out. He became a senior chief, and he had retired. Who took his own life after being out or I think he was in for 20 plus years.
Wow.
And kind of the same thing. Who's there for somebody who? I mean, we used to laugh at him because he always had these powwows. Like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, here he comes with his powwows, but he was so ooh and so all about it.
Yeah,
But like you said, who's there for him when he
right.
gets out, when he takes off the boots and he goes home? And I mean, I'm sure he had a wife and kids. I don't know the full details, but how do you even explain that stuff to your loved ones without maybe freaking them out? I think that's where some veterans struggle too. It's like I don't want to tell
Right.
my wife or husband, brothers and sisters, mom and dads, because like how are they going to take it that I'm struggling? Maybe it's going to freak them out and they're going to be
Yeah.
overbearing, and then that's not what you want necessarily.
Right.
So I'm sure you've seen a lot of this and heard a lot of this as well with
Yeah.
what you're doing now. So
It's extremely common, and I've lived it, and the military changed me and affected me, not in the same way as our newer generation of young combat veterans who deployed and saw their buddies blown up or threw rounds down range. Trust me, there's a big group of people who didn't see any action who have guilt about that too.
mhm,
And in my even moving into my profession now, um, there's a lot of that where you miss the tribe, you um, don't know who to go to. You want to protect your family from all the shitty stuff you saw. Like, why am I going to come home and rehash it and now tell my wife or my kids, oh, I almost got hit by a car today, or some guy pointed a gun at me, or all the things that you think, the times that you kind of skated by and left with all your fingers and toes and everything. There's a saying we say jokingly, but the goal is to leave every shift with the same holes in your body that you started with, right? So it's like I don't want any new holes. Um, but I spent a lot of years guarding myself and protecting my family from that, but that caused me to internalize it.
mhm,
And to my point is, after my brother took his own life, I realized that I needed to let them in. And when it became safe and I had a way to let them in, I had a way to safely communicate that with them. I still guarded with the information I share with them because you're looking at me behind a closed door in an office with four walls. My office is no longer a black and white patrol car.
mhm.
But 7 years removed from the streets, 7 years still in a law enforcement profession job, but I was able to decompress enough to where I can safely communicate those things and that really bothered me. And to my defense in that, I didn't even know it was bothering me. It was stuff. It was trapped in all the stuff I've learned in this journey. I've been to the Save a Warrior program. Fantastic. If you ever get a chance, check it out, Save a Warrior. I've used and called Stop Soldier Suicide. They set up free counseling for my family, um, that through trauma informed care, so that know how to understand and deal with trauma. So you're not going like to a marriage counselor telling them about all this trauma, and they're just looking at you going, "Oh, well, okay, maybe you should write that down." I mean, they have real ways to help you process. There's another organization called 220. So through all of these things, I've learned that our brains in the amygdala, you might know this already, but our brains trap the stress. The body literally retains the memory of your worst experiences in fight or flight.
Oh
So
wow.
I use a silly example of getting a paper cut, right, and getting ticked off, like, oh, that hurt. I'm not going to go. Nobody's going to go into a rage over a paper cut, but that is an example. My body feels pain. My brain responds to that hurt, and now my amygdala triggers a fight or flight response to tell my body it needs to survive.
Mm,
So that's when you get the anxiety and the stress response, where if somebody says something wrong to you, or somebody cuts you off, or whatever the triggers are, you ramp up into fight or flight, and then you take off. Most of us, our fight or flight is what? We fight. We're like,
yeah,
let's go
yeah.
now.
You go from
And
0 to 100 pretty quick sometimes, that's for sure.
yeah, yeah. So that's a lot of your amygdala. That's the stress. That's the body. That's the biological response. So I'm not a scientist. I don't know what chemicals are released, but understanding that kind of layman's term of it, even for me, I'm better able to manage those moments where I feel myself going into fight or flight, for lack of a better term. So through the Save a Warrior program, it's something that a buddy of mine reminded me. He says, "You got to catch yourself catching yourself." And the neat thing about the Save a War program was we created a new tribe. So there was 12. There was 13 of us. There were 12 brothers that went through, and it's been a while. It's been a year and a few months, and we're still keeping in touch with each other a year later.
Oh, that's
So, we,
awesome.
so we've created a new tribe, and from my 6 years in the Army, there's two guys I keep in touch with.
Yeah.
From my 1 year experience a year ago, I have 12 other guys I keep in touch with. So it is very important to maintain those connections. It is very important to safely share with your family your struggles. Not everybody's going to understand it, so you have to
Mm.
gauge that. But to the point of what you were saying was not exposing our family to that. We think we're being their protectors, but at the same time, we're actually hurting ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And I think some of what ends up happening too, you see, or I know I've kind of gone down this path a little bit myself, but alcohol becomes like the escape for um, many veterans. It's just you find. I think you feel like you're finding your answer in the bottom of a bottle, but you're actually
Yeah,
making things worse. I mean, I've definitely been on that end of it. I'm sure a lot have.
yeah,
And I think it is because, like you were talking about, you try to protect your family from that, but in the grand scheme of things, and like you're saying, it took you about 5 years to kind of figure it out. And I guess I'd say about the same for me. I've been out for the Navy now for 10 years. And it
mhm,
took me up to about 5 or 6 years in my late 20s to really start thinking like, what am I doing? Like this.
right,
This is not the same person that joined the military,
right,
super excited about the future,
right.
seeing the world and all this stuff. I'm starting to get in this rut and starting to not look myself in the mirror and address what's going on. I'm spiraling down. I'm like
Yeah,
killing too much alcohol in the day. It's insane.
sure,
Driving around with the buzz, which is super dangerous for
sure,
obvious
yeah,
reasons. I almost flunked out of college my first semester when I got out of the military. So
yeah,
it's like, what am I doing? And I think that's going back to the purpose thing and finding your tribe. It is super hard to do. Find both of
yeah,
that and the purpose aspect. I mean, I think a lot of veterans think they have to find something of equal purpose.
right,
That's not necessarily the case. I think as I've gotten older, and a lot of the guys I was in the military with got out about the same time as I did. Um, we find purpose like little things. It could be going fishing with your buddies,
right,
um, making time to go to a baseball game once a year or once a weekend or whatever it is, to just go shoot hoops with your family, go to the park, whatever that thing is. You find something, a new job, a new career path, whatever it is.
yeah,
And I don't think I can harp on that enough. The purpose is what I hear from everybody, extremely difficult to find. Um,
it is, yeah,
but like you also are saying that, you know, how many veterans keep in touch with actual or people that they were served with? I know for me, it's about the same, like two or three guys.
right,
But during this podcasting thing I've been doing, it's pretty cool. I met a lot of interesting folks like yourself, and keep talking to them. We message each other all the time now. It's like, man, we're starting to build a kind of a little tribe, like you were mentioning. Where
right,
we're like I said in the beginning, veterans I feel like are really taking things themselves and running with it. We're creating all these different avenues for veterans to get with each other and talk to each other.
yeah,
Like one of the guys I talked to on here a couple episodes ago, he started an app called Lower 22 Vets, where you can put your name in, and he encourages other veterans to do it. And if somebody's in your area, they'll tell you if they're 5-10 miles away from you, if there's a veteran. And he's like,
wow,
my goal with that is to get to where if you're bored or something's happening, you're going through some deep stuff, you can search your area, and if somebody pops up, you can link up right there on the app. Say, hey, maybe we should go to the gun range, or go get a
yeah,
drink and just decompress.
yeah,
Because it does get lonely. It can really be lonely, even when you have a big family or
yeah,
whatever it is. It can still feel really lonely, like you're in a cave and you're all by yourself. But
Yeah.
Um,
I think
yeah,
that's a
it's
good yeah, that's a good segue. I struggle with this myself because I've taken a lot of time and isolated, especially with what happened with my brother. I won't say there's shame in his decision, like what you think of historically. We're so shamed because of our religion, that kind of there's shame in the signs that I missed, and I'm a degree or less removed from another 7 suicides. So just understand that I was involved in crisis intervention team training. I was a SWAT crisis negotiator. I've literally talked people off of buildings and
wow.
stopped people from killing themselves, um, as part of a team, not me, like just walking
Yeah.
in Superman. I'm
Okay.
not trying to say that. I'm just saying either as a team or I'm the guy who talked them. And it's like my brother even called me one night in a rage, and it was the only time I've ever seen or heard him be like that. And that was probably the first indicator that I had that something mentally was going wrong. Again, in reverse, right? Or
Mhm.
what used to be called in rewind, I could look back at it and go to that point and say, "Oh, bingo! Here's where was my first clue." Um, but we look to motivators, right? As men, probably women too, but I can speak as a man. Jocko Willink, David Groggins,
Mhm.
gosh, Dave Ramsey. I mean, he's a financial guy. Uh, uh, Ken Coleman, he's another financial guy. But we look at these people who are very successful, who seem to always be up and motivated. And when you really and you really do a deep dive into what their message is that they don't always feel that way, but
Yeah.
they still get up and go, right? And I think that for me in my journey, my hardest thing is not feeling motivated and getting up and going, because for a period of time after my brother died, my energy was all put into getting up, going to work, doing a good job, and getting home safely. And outside of that, I had zero energy for extracurricular activity. I had zero interest in any of my old interests. I was a high school soccer coach. I played soccer as a kid. Um, I mean, I can tell there's a bunch of things that I like to do, but I didn't want to do anything. Like, I just wanted to get my ass up to work, come home safely, and get up again the next day. It really took a lot of energy for that. So some people might look to me, or I might even have an external view of myself and go, "How does that guy do it?"
Yeah.
And you could ask me, and I say, "I don't know how I'm doing it. I'm just doing it. I'm just doing it. I don't know how I'm doing it." But the reality is, and there's a lot of little cheesy cliches like it's okay to not be okay. Um, do buddy checks, all those things. And as cliche as they sound, we can't become numb to them, because when you're not feeling okay, bud, it's okay if you have a drink, but just call me, or shoot somebody a text. Don't be afraid, and don't internalize it to where you get up the next day and you think you're okay, and then you repeat it the next day. Then you hold it in again, and then you repeat it the next day, right? And we're guilty of doing that. And when we can sit with the brother and look into his eyes, like I'm looking at your eyes right now, and I still see some hurt there. You have to I have hurt. I carry hurt in my eyes. And when you sit down with a brother that's feeling it, and you're sitting across the table from him and you go, let's just be real for a minute, man.
Yeah.
Where are you at? Like, how are you doing? Like, how are you really doing? And we got to be okay with sitting and crying with each other. We got to be okay with hugging each other. I had a dream about my brother. God, I want to say it was like 6 months, maybe a year after he died. It was the oddest thing, because he was up giving a speech. I don't know what the speech was about, but I came up to him. I remember playing his day and giving him a big hug. Oh, I missed you, man. And I woke up during the hug, and that was it. That was like my body. Sorry, I'm going to get a little emotional, but my body or my mind or something recognized that I was accepting it. I was like moving on to the next stage.
Mhm.
And I wasn't really allowed to do that in public. You're not allowed to go to work and say, "Oh, I miss my brother today." You know, when's this guy gonna get over it? When is he
Yeah.
still on that? And nobody ever did that to me, but that's the fear we have, right? We have this
Exactly.
fear. Are people going to understand? Are they going to connect? Are they going to put me off duty? Am I going to lose my job? You know, and those are different stressors maybe for first responders, but they're the same things that non-first responders think about. You still have an image to maintain at work. I don't care if you work at Walmart or you work at JP Morgan. There's still an image and a persona that culture allows. So when we stay in that box and we don't find those people to connect with, I believe that's where the downward spiral gets worse and how so many folks end up taking their lives. Outside of the external factors of, medication, we've all heard the
Yeah.
medication.
Yeah.
Self-medicating with alcohol, I think that can lead to it, but that's extreme. I still think that's more of a coping mechanism. Um, but that's where I came up with the 5 pillars for our nonprofit. It's a mental wellness, physical wellness, financial wellness, relationship wellness, and career wellness. So I tick when I talk to someone new, I kind of do a check on those 5 things, and I call them the 5 pillars of at the VMPI. And
Mhm.
I'll share. You might have seen. I don't know if you've seen the image, but there's no science behind it. There's no studies behind it. There's no statistics behind it. This is lived real world shit, man.
Yeah.
When you deal with people at their very worst hour, the very worst moment, they're on the edge of a bridge or a building wanting to jump, or I had one guy that tried to kill himself with gopher bombs and a lawnmower in his house. He tried to suffocate himself.
Holy crap.
When they're at that moment, and I tell this to everybody I talk to, when they're at that moment, the one thing that saves them is love. Love saves them. There is something that that person loves. It could be their dog, it could be their cat, it could be their mom, it could be their auntie, it could be something. But if you could find that thing that they love that could bring them back from the edge, you could save their life and get them onto the road to repair.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean they're going to always be up and happy, but you give them opportunity to live another day. And those are the things I've learned through lived experience. I don't need statistics for that, and I don't need a book for that. Um, the education part of it comes in the long run. Like I have a formal education, I have a master's degree in law enforcement and public safety leadership, but the real world things that I can apply to life have been the most valuable. And I hope that conversations like this save lives, and I hope that you're going to share something I said, and I'm going to share something you said, and we can continue to move this discussion.
Oh yeah, it most definitely. I mean, yeah, some of what you're saying, it's extremely relevant to what I've gone through myself. Um, not too much recently, but like when my son was first born, I remember I'd come home and even when he's like a year or two old, and just the energy or wanting to even play with him, he's running around and jumping on me and just like that instant anger of just leave me alone type
Yeah,
thing happens.
yeah,
And you do have to sit back. It like I've told people this a number of times too. You really have to sit back, and I don't remember what the point was. I think it was the first time I actually like really lost it on my and I gave him a spank.
mm,
And then when I was done, I was like, I was like, what the hell am I doing?
right,
Like I was never spanked growing up. Why the hell? Why I would never do this? What am I doing?
right,
And I think that was like, sadly, that's a horrible way for it to happen. But it was kind of like the kicker for me. Like, okay, I got to stop just bringing work home, leave work at home.
yeah,
It is what it is. I come home, yeah, stop drinking as much beer as I was drinking. Stop
right,
that. Come home and have energy. Be there for them, for my family, because it's you can really get in a rabbit hole really
yeah,
quick. And I
yeah.
think I was like teetering down that hole myself until that moment. And I never even told anybody this, so it's kind of freaking me out even talking about this out loud.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's definitely going down that hole, and it's I told my wife this maybe few months ago. I was like, there was a point where I wrote a letter to myself and everything. Like you said, there is, you start thinking of things that you love. I remember writing it, and I didn't have anything near me where I would have hurt myself, but I was definitely contemplating, and that's as further far as I've ever gone. Is actually writing stuff down like a memoir, to everybody.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, damn, I don't know. I remember I was texting my brother actually, and I had told him, I believe, I was like, dude, I'm at this point right now, and I remember he kind of gave me a good old older brother type talk, just he's like, it sucks, but it's going to get better and stuff. You got so much going for you. You got, good career, you got family and all this stuff. And it's like taking a step back and really observe what you have, and you start
Yeah.
being grateful for it. And like, as I've gotten older, not think when I think about the military, not to dwell on it and like hold it as something that it's going to hold me back, but appreciate what it gave me, because it's
Right.
given me a lot. And I think a lot of folks dwell on, damn, what it was, what they had when they were in, because
Right.
it's for most people, you're 17, like you said, you were trying to join at 17. So was I, 18, 19 years old. That's your first real life experience. So a
Right.
lot of it you hold dear to you, and it
Yeah.
as a young adult, it kind of shapes who you're going to become or where you're
Right.
going in life, the type of person you are.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's easy to get lost in like, oh man, that's look what it gave me, and I miss that so much. Um, I wish I can go back. If I could, I'd
Right.
do it right now. But then you lose sight of what you have. You
Yeah.
have what if it's a family, like you said, or a dog, whatever it is. Um, when you take a step back and look at it from that perspective, I think you're actually grateful. It's like, man, how many families are lucky to have, like, my mom always was really proud to have me in the military. Like, how many families have that? You come home and your parents are so happy to see you. They got their star on their window.
Right.
Your kids are happy to see you, your wife, husband, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot to live for. Um,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I could see why folks do it, end up taking their own lives, because you can sink real quick, and like you said, or you talked about, sharing it with somebody. It's not the easiest thing to do, because you do think you're protecting them while
Right.
you're actually hurting them. It's better for you to be around than not here at the end of
Right.
the day.
Yeah. I've used the analogy. You may have heard it before, maybe not. But imagine like you're in a hospital in a full body cast. You can't move, right? You got like a little feeding tube and an IV in your arm, and that's how you're sustaining your nutrients. How do you think your family would react? Where would they be?
Hmm.
They'd be by your bedside, right? Like, oh, daddy, oh, my husband, oh, my boyfriend. I don't care what this, whoever they would be. Oh my God, we're just gonna pray and pray and pray and hope that they're better.
Hmm.
Now, remove the body cast and walk around in a nice suit, get to work every day on time and do your job, and have a that same type of pain running through your head all day, every day. Nobody can see it. What are they gonna do for you?
Hmm.
They have no idea that you're hurting, that you're in pain, that anything is going on. So when the little glimpse of weakness, the little glimpse of hurt, then they go, "Oh, are you gonna hurt yourself? Are you gonna? Or, oh, what do we need to do now?" And really, it's a mental injury. It's a moral injury that we carry.
Oh, oh man.
We're gonna
Okay.
react, and if you're afraid how people will respond, but if I was in a full body cast in the hospital, be no question. Everybody would know how to respond. I'd get flowers and chocolates, and
Yeah.
everybody would be by my bedside, or your bedside, however you want to put the spin to it.
Hmm.
But doing your own work on yourself, you can really help heal yourself and your family, and I really believe that. I've lived that, and it saddens me that it's taken me so long because my kids are 16, 24, 25, and 28. So there were some years there where dad was just emotionally unavailable, or dad was unavailable because he was putting time into his career and wasn't able to do a lot of things, right?
Mhm.
Dad, can we go to Disneyland? Maybe, you know. And now it's like, well, now with the job I have, it's like, well, what weekend do you want to go? If we have the money, we can plan it. And I make it a point to try to make those memories and make that effort. But there was a period of time there where, like you described, you just don't have the capacity for it, and we have to learn that that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I look at some of these videos and people are always up and they're always energized. I'm like, dude, you're making me tired. You know, how do you do that?
Yeah.
I'm finding my way back to that. I'm finding my way back to that. I didn't put pressure on myself on my diet or beverage choices. That has caught up to me. In 4 years, I've gained probably 25 to 30 pounds, 20 to 30 pounds. Not a super healthy thing to do, but it allowed myself to decompress and heal to the extent that now I can look and go, dude, you got to do something about this.
Mhm.
And you've been kind to yourself. You allowed yourself to do the things you needed to do, but unless you want an even earlier grave, then keep working at it. And if you can inspire somebody along the way, or you can mentor someone along the way, or share a little bit of hope, let's do it. And I do appreciate this opportunity to talk. I don't know if we hit all the talking points, but it's been a good discussion.
Yeah, it has. It's been really good. Yeah, so far I haven't dove too deep into some of the like what we're talking to with a lot of the folks I've talked to quite yet. I know there's like two things I was going to bring up, and one of the things I think you had mentioned before, kind of um, almost like find or having that hobby or something like
Yeah,
that. Um,
let me just check this.
and I think that is an important thing. Like you alluded to, it's whether it's something simple to do. It could be drawing or
Yeah,
uh, whatever it is. An escape from whatever you're going through is extremely important to have.
yeah,
Um, and I think I know I struggled with. I'm sure, kind of sound like maybe you were in the same boat, and other veterans, I'm sure, go through the same thing. After a while, you get complacent with certain things. Like I've gone through that point where it's like I start something, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to. I don't really care. I'm not going to do it, or I'll do it
yeah,
tomorrow. I'm going to do it. I'll do it, and it just sits there. That
yeah,
idea, that time to make time for myself,
yeah,
you don't do it. But one of the things I wanted to ask you as well. I just started thinking about this when we were talking, and how depression kind of comes in different forms and stuff. I was talking the last individual I had on here. She had brought up how cancer is starting to pop up in veterans years after their service
yeah,
due to exposure to whatever it is, the burn pits. And I know on one of the ships that when I was in the Navy, they went to the nuclear spills that they had in Japan during
yeah. Oh
the
man,
tsunamis and stuff.
yeah,
So I was going to ask you, I guess, not sure if you've encountered that yet with veterans who've been fine, say 10 years, 20 years out of the military, and then they all of a sudden get diagnosed with like some type of cancer, some type of illness that stems from their time in the military. And obviously that can lead to a whole new type of depression and
yeah,
maybe speed things up. So I'm not sure if you've encountered that, or even how you would help somebody that goes through something like that, because I think that's starting to be that's kind of a new thing I'm starting to see happen, because it obviously takes years for the
right,
data to kind of come out, and it's like, holy crap, men and women who worked by the burn pits and slept by these burn pits, well, shoot, now they're in their 40s and they're getting cancer, and they're finding out
right,
stemming from this thing. And
yeah,
maybe I can't, like, one of the things I think about is like, I can't imagine being like you get out and everything's so smooth and your transition's going well, and you have a family, and it's like, holy crap, for real, this is what's going to get me, is something that
right,
could have been avoided, but I was made to do. So,
yeah. I haven't come across a lot of veterans that have specifically been diagnosed with cancer, but I do know just to generalize the injury part of it.
Hmm.
I would say the injury part of it, that there's a grieving period that people definitely need to go through, and having those resources available, like Stop Soldier Suicide or the retreats or support groups. Even with what I do, I tell people my nonprofit, what I did, I started this a year ago. I have 800 followers on Instagram and 800 followers on LinkedIn, and I have 1,000 connections on LinkedIn just from a year of part-time hustle. Um, Should I forgot my train of thought. Um, Let me get that back. The grieving portion of it, to have those resources set up is important. And with what I do with mentoring, is trying to get folks on the front end before the crisis happens to link them up with some sort of resources and encouragement along the way. It's high interest and low demand
Yeah.
because, like you touched on, we started this conversation with this. We don't want to ask for help. We're the protectors. We're the caregivers. We have overwatch of our people. I got your back, brother. I got your back, sister. We
Yeah.
don't need the help. It's everybody else. We're available to them. But when it comes time for us, um, to more generalize it, I have my own health issues to deal with. The guys that I come across in the Save Warriors, some of them are a little bit older, some are same generation. One guy, we figured out he's young enough to be my son. He's like 20 years younger than me. It's like, wow, and here we are at the same point at the same time. It was fascinating to me. The mental and moral injury, it would be this very similar to dealing with a cancer. You're going to feel, I'd imagine, betrayed, almost like, why was I exposed to that? Um, how could this happen to me? What's my family's life look like without me? And the mental moral injury is similar, because if someone does get to that point, ask yourself the same questions.
Hmm.
What's the impact on my wife? What's the impact on my kids? It's not to guilt anyone. It's to take stock. You're a warrior. Let's talk real to warriors. There's a aspect of the mental health world where we're not supposed to talk about the hard stuff. We're not supposed to say things that might trigger people, right? But when you're dealing with a veteran, I'm sorry, I don't know your first name, bud.
Oh, Travis. Yeah.
Travis, I do know your first name. I'm totally blank. So Travis,
Okay.
you feel like killing yourself? What are you talking about, bud? Your family loves you. Get right to it. Same thing with the cancer. Man, that's a horrible diagnosis. Are you okay? How do you feel about it? Would you like some resources? I might know somebody that has, at least can set you up some counseling, right? And I think as long as we can extend that olive branch of friendship to a fellow warrior, I think you can make a difference. Our era was the guys in Gulf War One through the Gulf War syndrome, right?
Hmm.
I saw people losing their hair and being sick and getting ill from Gulf War One while I was still active. I remember being at the hospital and seeing people with that stuff. And now we
Oh,
kind of 20, 25, 30 years later now, really, you did this to another generation of soldiers, another
yeah.
generation of warriors are now have to deal with this. And we're only seeing the beginning of it.
Yeah.
Not to be a doomsdayer, but your generation of warriors is much younger. So realistically, if you look at the World War II generation, they're in their 90s now, and we're losing a lot of them. Now imagine 20 to 30 to 40-year-olds. They still got another 40 years
Yeah.
of life. This is a good another 40 to 60-year window of a generation of veterans that we're going to have to follow and be there for. So there's not going to be any shortage of the type of help you're trying to provide through these discussions, or
Hmm.
that I'm trying to do through mentoring. Um, I would just say you have a sentence and you insert blank, insert the illness, and you're going to have similar things. Focus on the mental health part of it, of cancer. Focus on the mental health part of heart problems. Focus on the mental health. And if we can keep our minds right and out of those dark areas that our brain starts to lie to us and say, the world will be better off without me, right? My
Hmm.
family will be better off without me. if you could change that, like if my brother was sitting here right now and I could change that and say, bro, your family loves you, your kids love you. What are they going to do without you? We need you. We love you. You know, your dog loves you, your fish loves you, whatever.
Yeah.
If we could change that and show the people that love, then guess what? It goes back to what I said earlier. Love wins, and that'll
Yeah.
keep people around. That's regardless of the title of the illness. I think if you focus on that, especially when you come across people and you want to have that discussion, be genuine.
Well, I appreciate everything you guys are doing over there with your nonprofit. I don't want to take up too much of your time here. We're already over an hour, so
Yeah, I tend to do that to people,
no, it's
but
fine. I really appreciate you coming on, and I mean it's a real honest discussion. It's something that I think, like you're saying, we need to have more of it. Not be afraid of it. Not shy away from it.
yeah,
It's a real thing, and I mean it's not good to let it eat you up and get to that point where maybe you do something that you wish you could take back if you could do it.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
um,
Let me look at your text real quick. I know there was something that you had said.
um,
Uh, you kind of talked about the nonprofit a little bit. Serving. We've talked about stories and then advice for transitioning. I mean, I'm happy to stay on for a few more, but I mean, if you gotta cut and run, we can maybe circle back. But I definitely this is an important discussion. It's an important discussion. I don't know how interested your viewers will be in what I have to say, but the fact that you and I are engaged and talking about it, I know that eventually I'll need a resource or you'll need a resource, and we'll reach back out and say, "Hey, dude, you know anybody that knows something about this?" And building that tribe is a tremendous feat.
yeah, it is. I mean, I'm at the time in, I guess, my age where some folks are still in because they're trying to retire. Like if I would have stayed in, I think I'd be at 13 or 14 years
Right.
in. So I got some guys I served with are still in that stage, and I have some supervisors when I was in that are now getting at the twilight of their tenure. They're hitting that 20-year mark and plus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's going to be interesting, and if any of those folks end up listening, or some of them got my number, always they can always I encourage them to reach out not only to me but even yourself and other organizations or other friends and veterans or whatever it may be, and that's in their area or just a phone call away. Sometimes that's huge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I'll end it here with this question. Yeah, so if for transitioning veterans or active military members making that transition, I know we've talked about getting your mental aspect right. What's that key advice you would give to somebody today if I had just got out, walked off the ship for the last time? What would you tell that veteran, now veteran?
Yeah. I'll add to that. I'll say I would like to have attack this way that if you and I were going to sit down and have a beer right now and say, dude, what's transition like? I would say stand by, stand by, because you look, dude, you think you're going to get out and conquer the world and the successes of your military career are going to follow you. They don't. And I say that with a caveat that they can. They can because you can take your work ethic and your training, your know-how, know-how, your remember can-do attitude. How do they still say that in the military? You have a can-do attitude. You can take all of those positive aspects of your military experience and transition well. But you have to accept and understand, and you'll get to this point where you understand that it's very different out here.
Hmm.
And the 25-year-old that's working in the cubicle next to you might be intimidated by you. Um, People out here don't have to follow a rank structure. They don't want to hear all your military stories. There's a time and a place for it, but the two the two things I would say is follow your interests. If something interests you and you don't know what you want to do, follow your interests. Find something. Just My wife told my kids the other day, they said, Put a list of 5 things down, assign them a number, and roll the dice and follow one of them. See where it goes, but make sure it's an interest, right? A genuine interest. And then the second thing is just never give up. Never give up. You're gonna have successes and failures along the way. This little flag thing you see behind me here, that was given to
Mhm.
me back in 1998, and it hangs on my wall today. It's been reframed once. It's from when I was a sergeant, and I look at it. It says something like, it says, for an outstanding and competent NCO, we of Shops Platoon present you with this parting gift. Your leadership and hard work was appreciated by the soldiers and by your peers. We wish you well. Can't read it anymore. In the future, and when you look back at to these times, know that you made a difference. So, that thing's been. I've had that for 20 something years. It's been in the garage and it's been on my wall. Either way, it was still written down 20 years ago.
Mhm.
I can look at that and I can draw on that and go, man, that did make a difference. So when you think your military experience didn't make a difference, it absolutely did. So you're not allowed to give up. You got to keep pushing forward. Even if that means you slide back a little bit, your goal is still to keep pushing forward. And don't be afraid to reach out. Find a mentor. Um, if you get stuck in a rut, look for resources. There's something like 40,000 nonprofits out there that are willing to help. I take the time to vet those resources. So, as a resource, you're forever going to be able to reach out to me as a resource to say, hey, do we got something for this?
Mhm.
So, that's what I would say. Follow an interest and never give up.
Awesome. Well, cool. I appreciate it, James. Thank you so much for your time and everything. So
Yeah.
really appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate the time, dude. It was a good discussion. I mean, it wasn't super formal, so I appreciate the flow of it. I appreciate you, man. And let's keep in touch, okay?
All right, we'll do. Thank you.
All right, man. Okay.
All right, bye.
Take care.
You too.